So welcome everyone to this webinar, which is about IT Center for Science, CSCs, services for different stages of the research data lifecycle. And I'm going to kick the seminar off by talking a little bit about good data management and CSC services that support that. My name is Heidi, Laine. I work at CSC as a customer solution manager focused on data management solutions. And a couple of practical things. You can ask questions using the chat function. I will answer questions after my presentation, which takes roughly 30 minutes. You can also, if you want to give your question orally, you can use the raise hand function to show that you want us to open your microphone, and then you can ask your question directly. After my presentation, there's going to be presentations by Suvi, Pousi and Erja Kortelainen, where they will take you through the Fairdata services workflow. So let's get going with my presentation. Good data management and CSC services that support good data management. So a quick introduction to CSC. What is CSC? What we do? CSC is a company owned by the Finnish government and Finnish institutions for higher education. Government owns 70% of CSC stakes, and the rest 30% are spread among the higher education institutions. Currently, our headcount is a little bit over 400 and growing. And our headquarters is in Espoo, and we have a data center in Kajaani. Because of our kind of special status, we are owned by the government. Our business model is non-profit, and the higher education institutions are our customers. We can act as an in-house service provider for our owners, which makes procurement processes a little bit simpler. Here's a slide about our customers. Actually, the title could be, a better title would be the groups that we serve, because in CSC lingo, customers are our organizations, our owners, and then researchers are end users. But of course we serve them equally. There have been a couple of hands raised. If the hands raised relate to questions about the content of this presentation, then I advise you to wait until I'm finished. But if there are some issues with the technical quality of the webinar, for example, then please write them in the chat. And yes, my apologies. I also forgot to mention that the webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be later available on CSC's YouTube channel in about a week's time. Yeah. But back to the presentation then. So we serve a wide variety of end users and customers, and therefore we have a wide variety of solutions. Today we are focusing on research and especially research data. So then we move on to good data management. At least in my kind of social bubble and professional bubble, there's a lot of
lot of buzz and talk about data, and this has been the case for many years already now. So what's so special about data? We have, I think at this stage, kind of even ad nauseam heard the phrase that data is the new oil. But it's actually quite spot on, I think. And I've managed to trace the origins of this cliche or slogan to a mathematician, Clive Humby, who said this in 2007, that data is the new oil, but it's only valuable if it's refined. And I think that's exactly correct. So data in itself is not that valuable. It's only after you kind of refine it and make it valuable and make it good quality, then the full potential is unleashed. Data is also fun. Here's a graph that I find interesting and amusing. It's Google data about this phrase, data is the new oil. There you can see that it emerged in 2007 and has, well, not so steadily, but still it's been growing. There are two major bottlenecks currently to harnessing the full potential of data, data quality and data accessibility. Here's a chart from a survey that was conducted among data scientists, often dubbed the sexiest profession of our time. But according to at least one data scientist, he feels more like a data janitor than something really like a superstar like and sexy, because according to this survey, almost 80% of the time of data scientists is spent on this kind of little bit tedious task, cleaning data, what is sometimes called data wrangling, and collecting data, and only some 20% of the time is spent on the kind of the more exciting and fun stuff, doing the analysis. So so if we could increase the quality of the data, we could push these percentages down, the data wrangling part of the job. And then the accessibility, here's a graph from the European Commission Open Science Monitor, which shows that among the respondents, only 13% had used the data repository for their data, and putting your data in a repository is the only kind of responsible way of making it open and reusable. So we definitely have our work cut out. And I showed the slide about the different types of solutions that CSC provides. Data management is only one part of it, but I like to think that understanding data is actually key to all CSC services, because digitalization is, at least to me, essentially about data. New digital frontiers, such as machine learning and Internet of Things, they are based on good quality data. The computer science community knows this garbage in, garbage out paradigm, which means that you need to have good data from the get-go in order to get good results. The data doesn't magically turn into gold in the process. But what is the data then? This is a quite deep philosophical question, actually. When we talk about research data, what is it? It's more relevant to ask when is research data than what is it? Research data is data that is used in research. Basically, it can be almost anything. It can be social media data, pictures, publications, statistics, audio, almost anything that is in a digital format. But for the, especially when you thinking about the services that you want to use, it's good to try to categorize the data a little bit to understand the stages of the life cycle and the needs that rise from it. Here's one possible way of approaching research data that we have used at CSC, where we put it in 3 categories: the raw data, which is raw essentially. It can be anything directly coming from some machine kind of. Dynamic research data is already a little bit more refined. It's version controlled. You can cite it, but it's still kind of active and actively in use. And then we have the research data set publications, which is the type of research data that many of these open science policies are directed at. This means the data that is used as evidence behind some research claims, and this should be stored in an immutable form so that it can be used to verify the results. And many of our data management solutions are directed at this type of data. Metadata is key. Another quote from Jason Scott, which I really like: metadata is a love note to your, it can be to yourself or someone coming after you. And also metadata can be categorized and is useful to approach it in different ways because it serves different purposes. And we have also services that help you to provide your data with good quality, rich metadata. That's something that Suvi and Erja will be talking about more. Data management might seem pointless to define data management. It's kind of commonsensical, but I want to underline the kind of the soft and social side of data management. It's only to quite small degree about technical solutions. A big part of data management is human interaction and decisions about what is valuable and what is not. So this is a really important thing, I think, to recognize. FAIR principles, I hope that many of you have heard about this before already, but I assume that not many know them by heart. This is an acronym that was established or first published in 2016. Data should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And it has quickly become this kind of go-to principles in these open science discussions, even though FAIR doesn't necessarily mean open. The original intention was to promote the machine actionability, the semantic interoperability of data. Barend Mons, who is the president of International Science Council's Data Committee and one of the originators of the FAIR principles, has summarized the FAIR principles into this: the machine knows what I mean. But this is quite a tall order. So after the publication of these FAIR principles, kind of new kind of discussion has started. What is practical and what is kind of fair enough? Because not all data can be semantically interoperable and machine readable. So findability is something that you can achieve, not necessarily 100% from the point of view of the FAIR principles, but still to be fair enough. If your data is described in a metadata catalog with rich metadata, has a landing page and preferably a persistent identifier, is accessible through internet, has versioning, lifecycle documentation, has tombstone page. If it's deleted, sometimes it's very legitimate, almost necessary to delete data, for example, if the data in question is sensitive personal data. Interoperability requires common, documented, and open formats and standards, and reusability. Again, we come back to metadata. The data needs to be richly documented and understandable, and have clear information about conditions for reuse. Then licenses. So this might sound like a lot, but there are services that do this for you, so you don't have to go as a researcher through all of these individual points and do it by hand. By choosing the right services, you can achieve this. Then about openness, as open as possible, as close as necessary is the kind of the slogan that has begun to dominate this open science discussions when we're talking about data. So openness it's not about some kind of data happy hour where everything is immediately completely open online. It's more about not taking the closed option as a kind of a default setting, but really thinking about whether it would be possible to open your data and to what degree. Often, even if the data is very sensitive and cannot be opened, the metadata can be made openly available, so that there is knowledge out there of the existence of your data, even though the data itself cannot be accessed. Sensitive data is a hot topic, how to manage it, and often it is kind of used as almost as a synonym to sensitive personal data, but sensitive data can be other types of data also than personal data, and not all personal data is sensitive. Any information that you want to protect from illegitimate access is sensitive. So again, it's good to have add some nuance to your data descriptions. Why is it sensitive? GDPR defines this special category data for personal data, and that gives one definition for sensitivity. And of course, with GDPR has come the responsibility to do this data protection impact assessments for data that can potentially cause harm to the data subjects. Organizing research data management support in organizations is often challenging, because like I said, with the definition of data management, there's so much this kind of social and human interaction side involved. There's legal issues, financial issues, libraries are involved, archiving issues, IT, and in organizations, these services are often dispersed. So we, in our experience, this kind of network data support models in organizations work very well, where the researcher, the end user, has only one contact point to reach all of these different aspects of data management services. And of course, organizational data policies are very important. And here's an example of ours, the CSC data policy and the principles. And this policy applies both to us, to CSC, and also our customers that use our services to manage their data. Here's a link to the full document. It's quite a bit longer than this. Is just a summary, the headlines. So then finally to the services themselves. So we're just taking a really quick glimpse of what we have to offer, and we've made a selection based on this kind of idealized research project lifecycle. This is of course quite a difficult task, because very rarely the real life research projects follow any kind of clean cycle. Oftentimes things go back and forth between these stages. But bear with me. And when we open with a service that is actually not CSC service, we have in Finland this national data management policy, planning tool, DMP Tuuli, which is a service provided by the University of Helsinki Library. But we strongly recommend using this because when you plan your data management early on in your project life cycle, it's easier to do good data management and also to take advantage of CSC services. Like I said in the beginning, the understanding your data is a key to harnessing the full potential of your data and CSC services. So this is free to use, offered by the Ministry of Education and Culture. Then cooperation, team science is a big thing nowadays, and especially during this Corona times when everyone is working remotely. These solutions that help are essential. We have this Eduuni service that allows creating, for example, co-writing documents and creating project wikis and managing smaller scale data documents among a project consortium. And the good thing about Eduuni is that you don't need to be affiliated with a certain organization or even a certain country. You can, if your organization has Eduuni in use, you can invite pretty much anyone to cooperate with you there. Unifine Center is a service for, like the name states, sending files. Whenever you have too big a file to send it through email, or because it's sensitive, or you want more security than an email can provide, then Unifine Center is for you. Then the analysis phase, when you're crunching your data, we have this CPOTA and EPOTA infrastructure as a services. So they're kind of platforms for you to run your software on. EPOTA is a secure environment for sensitive data, and then we are building an easy to use remote desktop service on top of this EPOTA. I have a slide about that coming up. Then of course what CSC is most known are the supercomputers. Currently we have the Pousi supercomputer running, and Mahti is coming up, and later on we'll have the joint European endeavor LUMI supercomputer coming up next year. Allas is an object storage for storing data. Currently it serves best those using Pousi doing computation for storing their data during that process. Then this is the circle that I had the toughest time naming. It was first data management, and then I wanted to change it because all of this cycle is pretty much about data management. So I titled it data storage and sharing, but of course we have the Unifine Center is about sharing data, Eduuni is about sharing data. So yeah, it's hard. And these are of course always artificial, this type of categories. Oh yes, we also have I forgot to mention notebooks, which is this kind of lightweight computing environment, especially suited for running courses, for training and learning events. And then CSC coordinates this European UDAT data infrastructure, which provides a variety of B2 services. Here I picked the P2 Drop, which is a service that could be compared to the Dropbox, the commercial Dropbox service that many of you probably are familiar with. And And then the kind of the crown jewel of our data management services is the Fairdata service family, which consists of EDA storage solution, Unifine, which is a metadata creation tool, Etsin, a metadata catalog, and then at the end of the road, kind of the Fairdata plus this Fairdata permanent long-term storage solution, which is not for all data. It's intended for especially valuable data sets that we want to store for future generations. We're talking about even hundreds of years in the future. Quite a new addition is this library for open learning materials, which is also a good thing to keep in mind if your data is such that it could have use in education. The data, of course, that goes here needs to be completely non-sensitive, no personal data. It is completely open for anyone to use. So not suited for all, but still a good thing to keep in mind. And then the last circle I've titled reporting. So I wanted to mention the research.fi portal that we are about to launch in June, which is this research information portal about Finnish research. So it's about this kind of type of metadata for research. So not so much part of the research project lifecycle from the individual researcher's point of view, but for example, from the organizational point of view, a very important component. And yes, you will be getting the link to these slides from the website of this webinar. So I won't go through these slides. I have about every service I mentioned, more information here on this slide set. I won't go these through in detail, but you can come back to this slide set and find out more information and links. And also I've added here information about whether these services are free of charge to use or whether there is a cost. Tuuli is free of charge. Eduni is it's a paying service. The organization takes it into use, and after that it's free to use for the end users. Funet File Center comes with the Funet national network. So I think every higher education institution is a member. So with that, you already have the Funet File Center service, and you don't have to pay any additional fees. Then a couple of words about the upcoming service for sensitive data. It's in the piloting phase at the moment, and it should be in production sometime later this year, depending on how the pilots go. And also the usage policy needs to be determined. This is something that we need to negotiate with the ministries, because this is a part of this national data management DL 2021 initiative funded through that. So there's still some work to be done on defining the use policy. But the idea is that that there's going to be a remote desktop solution through which you can access your data through a web browser, for example. So it's very user friendly. The data is encrypted when submitted, and you can share rights to your sensitive data the way you wish. You can allow partners to see unencrypted data, but only as a read-only version, so they cannot make copies, for example, and you can revoke access rights whenever. And here's Puhti and Sepouta and Epouta. They are notebooks. They are free of charge services. UDAT services, they have a freemium version, but also a premium version, which allows us to tailor the type of data management workflow for your organization that you need. And there's going to be more information about EDA and the other Fairdata components later on, so I won't go into them. And also, of course, the library of open educational resources is free of charge to use, as well as the research information portal and the Justus Chris. Oh, I'm sorry, I have forgotten to translate this slide into English. Apologies. I will do that before we download it to the training website. Some useful links for you to remember. csc.fi/training is where you find information about our trainings, and Fairdata.fi is a really valuable resource for information about data management in general and specifically about the Fairdata services. My.csc.fi is a portal where you can apply resources for our computational and data storage services, and then docs.csc.fi is where all the service manuals are. We have compiled some service application examples to our wiki page. It's a work in progress, but there are already some application examples that you might find useful. So go check that out. And then lastly, a few words about CSC in this ongoing crisis. So we are working remotely as most everyone who can, but our services are available and running just as normally. So no problems there. We have prioritized COVID-19 related research in our services. So if you are working on such a project or know about such a project and want to know more, please contact our service desk. And here are some links about information related to the current situation. But that's it for me. Thank you very much for your attention and patience. And now I open the chat to see the questions there. There's quite a few. There was also a hand raised, I think, but I'll start with the written questions. Is there any detailed guideline on the use of e-duuni?
I actually already pasted some links to the chat. So there are training videos and materials available online. Yes,
thank you so much. And about I've heard that in some organizations, e-duuni is recommended as a service for sensitive data, and it is audited to this VAHTI 4 level, so it's technically very secure, but the security of e-duuni is at the end of the day, it depends on the users and the organization and the type of guidelines that are given at the organizational level, how to share access rights and things like that. So that's something that I wanted to mention. Then are there any other? Is the service for sensitive data connected somehow to Fairdata services? Well, it's the same team is working with the sensitive data solution and the Fairdata services, but is there going to be some kind of data pipeline between these resources, that I cannot answer right off the bat. That is something that that I need to get back to. So if this was a question by Juha Pajula. So I'll be happy to address this question outside this webinar later on. So you can email me. Here's my address, heidi.laine@csc.fi. If you want to elaborate the question a little bit, I'll be happy to pass it on to our sensitive data experts. And then there's a question about the difference between CPOTA and ALLAS, and someone has already answered it. ALLAS is storage, CPOTA is a computational environment. So then were there any hands raised?
There is one hand raised.
Okay.
So we'll allow now.
Yes, I can see it. Julian Lin.
Yes.
Yes, I would like to ask, when you talk about access to the sensitive data, now I have data on CPOTA. I have a sort of virtual machine there.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to share the data, right now I'm using this Pousi to share the data. Through Pousi, I can have the access to, I open the access from Pousi to CPOTA virtual machine. So people can go through their own account in CPOTA and get a password, user ID password to the MariaDB from Pousi. Is there a way to share the data directly from CPOTA virtual machine? For example, if I write PHP codes that can get access to the database, then the users, they don't necessarily to install the key pairs to their machine to be able to go to the CPOTA virtual machine. Is that right?
Okay, I'm sorry, but this is the type of a little bit more technical question that I unfortunately don't know the answer to right off the bat. So I need to. I'd be happy to direct this question to our experts who can better advise you on these kind of detailed use-related questions. So would you mind, for example, emailing me this question, and I'll be happy to answer you as soon as possible. But unfortunately, I am not an expert on use of CPOTA and Pousi and such in kind of at this level. And like Suvi put on the chat, you can ask these type of questions at service desk at csc.fi whenever. But of course, in this case, I'm also happy to facilitate. So please feel free to email me or the service desk, and we'll give you a proper answer, better than I can give right now. Yeah, sorry about that. And also Juha Pajula asks, ePouta is limited to single organization. Is it possible to set up ePouta for multiple organizations? Again, this is something that I can't answer, unfortunately. So I will definitely find out and provide an answer to you. I can. No.
I also think that it's not possible because it's because of the way that it's set up inside the organization's network. So, but we can check this.
Yeah. Okay. If there are no more questions or no more questions that I can answer, I'll pass the proverbial mic to Suvi and Erja. I unfortunately have to leave the webinar at this time to attend another meeting, but thank you very much for your attention, and once more I stress that please feel free to contact me personally or the service desk at any time with any questions that you might have, and we will find out the answers for you.
Hello. So in this section of the webinar, we'll be focusing on only the Fairdata services. My name is Suvi Pousi, as Heidi already told you. Erja and I will be telling you about the Fairdata services, and we are the product owners of IDA and Kuvainen Etsin at CSC. And we'll also be giving you short demos so that you can see what the services look like. Yep. So the Fairdata services are integrated services for storing, sharing, and publishing research data. They help to make the research data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, as the name suggests. So they are helping the researcher with following the FAIR principles and also answering to the requirements of openness. The services are offered free of charge to Finnish universities, universities of applied sciences, and state research institutes. So they can be taken into use whenever without any bureaucracy. They are organized by the Ministry of Education and Culture and produced by CSC. And Erja and I will explain what they are for, what they do, and how they are used. You already saw this slide by Heidi, and it emphasizes that the Fairdata services come into play in the latter part of the project's research data lifecycle when the data are becoming mature. So they are not for the kind of active data that is continuously updated, and maybe not even for dynamic research data that is all the time changing, maybe in a database or something like that. But they are when you want to publish a research data set and want it to be immutable. And as Heidi said, is for example, if you have a research article and you have data that is connected to it, then you want to show that this is the data that I used in this research. They are not tied to a specific field of science, so basically anyone can use it, but there might be some other services for some field of sciences that are more, they have some features that are more better suited for that data. They do accept all file formats for the data that is stored there, but please use common and, if you can, open file formats and follow standards. And they are not for storing and sharing sensitive data because they kind of focus on openness and that, so they're not that for that kind of data. And these services provide things that the researchers can't create on their own, such as persistent identifiers for datasets. So for example, if a researcher is publishing an article, the journal might say that please provide your data and provide it with a digital object in identifier DOI. And then you have to figure out where can I get a DOI for my data, and this is where that can be achieved. So here are the main service components, which we will be showing in today's demo. The main components are in the Fairdata services are IDA for storing the data, which you can see, which is the first step. And then there's Kuvine, or in this case, Kuvine's a live version for creating metadata descriptions. And then Etsin research data finder, where the published datasets can be found. So typically the data are produced, processed, and analyzed outside these services. Mature data are brought into the IDA service, where it can be still organized, it can be renamed and shared among project members or even outside the service to, for example, check its quality. And when the data are considered to be ready to be defined as a dataset, or otherwise it's thought that it will no longer change and it needs to be stored securely in the service, it can be made immutable in IDA by freezing it. So it becomes frozen data in the service, and that is the immutable part of the data in IDA. And when the files are frozen and they are in read-only state, they can be linked to this higher level description about the dataset with Kuvine. And this dataset description, for example, defines a data usage license and tells enough about the data so that it can be found both by humans and machines. So there's license and creator information and such, and information about the data, so it can be utilized by others and found by others. And the final step is publishing the data after that it will get a persistent identifier and a landing page in Etsin. And this landing page, which the identifier always leads to, it resolves always to this page, or whatever page is the metadata page. Anyway, that makes sure that the data can be found, utilized, and cited by others. And the dataset files are downloadable from Etsin. Then below these services, there's also the digital preservation service for research data. And we won't be focusing on that today, but that is a service that is integrated to the other Fairdata services. So digital preservation refers to the reliable preservation of digital information for several decades or even centuries. And to use that service, the researcher's home organization is required to make a contract. And as I said, we won't be focusing on this digital preservation today, only on the IDA, Kuvine, and Etsin part, but you can find more information from digitalpreservation.fi. And then to the part where I will tell you about how to actually use the services. I will first show you a little bit of instructions on slides, and then I will show you IDA. And after that, Erja will tell you the same things about Kuvine and Etsin. This slide is a little bit heavy, but bear with me. This shows all the steps that you are required to make to publish the data. So there are 4 steps here, and first of all, if you are from a Finnish university, University of Applied Science, or a state research institute, you need to create a CSC user account using your Haka ID or Virtu. You can do it by yourself online, and there are instructions online for it, and even videos and all that. And then you need to use IDA to store your data. And before you start using IDA, you need some amount of storage space for your data. And that depends on your project, that what kind of needs you have. And you can, depending on your need, you are able to get terabytes, tens of terabytes, but others just have, for example, 100 gigabyte of IDA storage space. So big or small, it is possible to get different kinds of storage spaces in IDA. So this is marked in this list as an optional step, which means that if you only want to publish your dataset metadata, or if your data is already stored somewhere else and you only want to provide a link for it, then you can also do that. You don't have to use EDA to store the files. But this also means that we don't provide this DOI for your data if you use that remote resource option, only URN. So EDA storage space is often applied from home organization online in the same place where you create the user account, but it can be also applied based on an eligible Academy of Finland funding decision. And then when you apply for it, you first create a project. You can add other members to that project so that they can have equal rights to that same EDA storage space as the one who creates the project. So people can collaborate on the data before they publish it. And then you apply for the storage space and start using EDA once it's granted. And then you simply store your data in EDA and freeze it. After that, you go to this Unifine Metadata tool to fill in a form, kind of to describe your data and link your frozen EDA files to it. So the ones that are made immutable can be linked to this dataset description. And then you publish the dataset. And the last step is just to view your published dataset, see that everything is correct there. You can, if you want, you can edit the metadata still. Editing the files will create a new version. So you maybe want to be sure that you don't have to edit them right away. And then you probably want to check its persistent identifier, which is used, for example, when referencing the data. And I will show you now the step 2 in more detail, the part where you store your data in EDA and freeze it. So here are 2 slides about how to store it. I will first show you the slides and then how to do it in EDA. Here, one point still, it says that the researcher uploads the data to the project staging area. I will tell you what that area is, but in some organizations, the organization's data support or open science support might want to help the researchers publish the data. So at least in universities of applied sciences, it's recommended to contact the organization's research data support or research support services to check that are there some specific guidelines when publishing the data. So that might be a good idea anyway if you're unsure about licensing or filling in the metadata. Okay, but anyway, researcher first uploads the data to EDA in a folder called the project staging area, and that is here in the upper screenshot. There are 2 folders. One is the project's identifier, and the other one is the project's identifier with a plus mark in the end. So the plus folder, which means kind of like adding data, plus is the staging area, and the other one is the read-only frozen area. And when they put their data in the staging area, all project members can view, edit, download the data. And editing in here means that they can organize it in folder structures and they can rename the data. So it's a very normal file system at this point. And then when the researchers think that, okay, this is now the data set that we want to store immutable, in immutable state, they select a snowflake icon, which is shown in the UI, and then they click freeze. Freezing the data makes it read-only and makes it possible to publish the dataset or this data later. And frozen data in EDA is still visible to the project members only. So everything in EDA stays in EDA. The files are not visible for someone outside the project. Yep. I will now change to the actual EDA service or its demo version. Hopefully you can see it. So we will be now using the browser version of EDA's UI. You can also use it with command line tools if you have large amounts of data. So here, the first step is logging in the EDA service. I will log in with demo account, which is kind of like a CSC account, but you can also log in with Haka once you have access to EDA. So, as I said before, there are now 2 folders. The one above is the frozen area, and the one below here is the staging area. They are now both empty. There's nothing here, no files here, and nothing here. And I now want to start adding data to my EDA storage space. So there are a couple of ways to do it, but as it says here, files can be only added to the staging area. So I want to go inside the staging area to add files. So I could do it through this plus icon here, but I'm going to do it the easy way now. Actually, I will check. Yeah, hopefully you can now see my whole screen. Yeah. So I have a couple of files and folders on my desktop here. There's a folder and then just a couple of individual files. And I will use drag and drop to add them in the staging area like this. There. Oh, there's some kind of demo effect. There was some kind of problem with adding 2 files. I will try to add those again. Let's see here. They are all there. I don't know what that demo effect was about, but they are already here. So they were just some kind of bug in the UI. So I have them now in the staging area, and now I feel that this experiment 1 is ready to be published, and I click the snowflake icon and I freeze this data, and it asks me that am I sure, and depending on the amount of data, it can take some time for it to be frozen. I click that yes, I am ready, and it will be done as a background operation, so I don't have to be in EDA while it's being frozen. So when I froze the data, it now disappeared from the staging area, and it appeared in the frozen area, which is this folder here. And now I cannot anymore rename or rearrange data here. I cannot add more folders directly to the frozen area, and I can rename this file. And what happened to it during the freezing? I can look at its details. Doesn't say anything here. I will check the actions. Yes, so what happened during the freezing is that it got a checksum generated so that we can later check that the file is intact, and it was also replicated onto another storage media. And it also says that this folder has now been successfully frozen. And it also tells that which files inside that folder were frozen. So that was the storing and freezing part in EDA, and I will now switch to Erja.
How about Suvi? There are a couple of questions. Do you
Okay.
take them now or after Erja's presentation?
Depending on what they are, I could also just one second.
One is dynamic space allocation in EDA possible? It would be beneficial so that PIs wouldn't reserve space for security's sake.
Yes, that means that when you're applying for EDA storage space, you probably don't maybe know how much storage space you are going to be using during this project, because you might be using EDA for a couple of years even before publishing the data, or you might use it and publish data every now and then with the same project. So it might be hard to know in advance that how much storage space you use, and you might be using more storage space at some point and then less later when you feel that you can delete some data that is no longer needed. So at the moment, changing the EDA storage space quota is possible, but it's done through service desk, so by email, by contacting CSC, and I will check from the organization that I will notify that there has been this kind of request. But we are planning to add this feature to My CSC, the customer portal, where you create your account and projects, because other services also need this kind of functionality. For example, Allas, it might be very useful to change the quota dynamically so that space isn't reserved for just because it's possible. Then there was a question about storing the data in EDA and sharing with it someone outside the organization. If you have, for example, collaborators from the US, yes, you can do two things. You can either give just a share link to someone outside the project. So in the UI, if you can still see it, you can decide to create a share link, and then my chat is in the way, and copy it. So it's something that you can copy paste to the browser's address bar, and then you can see only the data that has been shared and downloaded, but you cannot make any changes to it. So this is the kind of thing that you can share someone outside the project, and that can be anyone, and it can be accessed by anyone who has this link, but you can also password protect this link. This link is valid for maximum of 90 days, so no longer than that. And that's because we want to make it sure that people don't put it to some publication and think that this will be the way to access the data forever, because that link might change, and the link even says not for publication. The other way to do this is if you have foreign collaborators, the one who creates the project can contact CSC and ask us to create a user account for someone who is not in a Finnish university or research institute, and we will create a user account for them to be added to an existing project. That is also possible. And also you can have collaborators from multiple Finnish organizations inside the same project. So this is a typical use case where you have someone from University of Helsinki, maybe Aalto, some University of Applied Science, and so on, and you can all collaborate with the same data in the same EDA storage space. Yep. Were there any other questions now?
No, I don't think so. Oh,
there was one question about security, and so we haven't audited EDA to be anything else than the baseline security level, so we haven't really put an emphasis on storing data or making sure that the requirements are met in EDA, because it's not meant for sensitive data. But the question was that could sensitive data be stored to EDA during the project and then in the end make a new version of it, an anonymous version of it, and then publish that one. Not recommended, because at the I wouldn't put sensitive data in EDA, and the terms of use don't allow it at the moment. But of course, you can publish and store anonymized data through EDA, but the sensitive one is not meant for these services. Okay, I think I can now stop my share and Erja can continue.
So yeah, my name is Erja Kortelainen, and with Suvi, I work as a product owner in Fairdata. My services include Etsin, Kuvainlight, and also the metadata repository Metax. We are not going into Metax in this presentation. All you need to know for now is that it is in the background, storing all the metadata and datasets. Suvi just described and showed how to store the data in IDA, and now I'm going to give you a look how to publish the data as a dataset. Okay, I only have a couple of slides just to quickly present the steps needed to make the dataset public or published. After the slides, I will demonstrate how to actually do it in Kuvainlight and how it would then be seen in Etsin. So okay, the tool for describing the dataset is Kuvainlight. At the moment, whoever publishes the dataset in Kuvainlight is the only one who can edit the metadata in later phases. During this year, we are adding the possibility to have multiple editors. It could be a whole project, the same project that is making the data in IDA, or maybe in individual users, or some other specific group of people in an organization, for example, data support or something. But that is still under planning, hopefully coming this year. So yes, at the moment, one researcher or user logs into Kuvainlight, and you have to have CSC account. But if you have created the account so that it's linked to Haka account, you can also use that when you log in. So first step, just log in. After you have logged in, you will add the metadata. It's just a simple form, not many mandatory fields, only a couple of them. Later this year, we are adding some fields to Kuvainlight, but mandatory fields stay as they are now. So just additional fields coming during the year. So step 2 is to fill in all the required metadata. Basically, just fill in the form. Step 3, in the same form, after the metadata has been added, the user adds the data itself. Data can be just links to remote data if it's stored outside of Fairdata. Or you can select the EDA files that were frozen in EDA. When everything's ready, then just publish the dataset. It's then ready. After publishing, the dataset will be visible and findable in Etsin, and there will be a persistent identifier, either DOI or URN. Whoever makes the description of the metadata can decide whether he wants DOI or URN. And based on the access type, the user adding to metadata can decide whether the data is downloadable by all, or is there some limitations of who can download the data. I will show you in Kuvain Lite how that's done. So really simple steps, and I will now show how it's actually done in Kuvain Lite. So hopefully you can soon see the Etsin. Can you see Etsin at the moment?
Yes.
Okay. To log in Kuvain Lite, just you can do it in Etsin's default page. We are now in Etsin demo, but the correct address is etsin.fairdata.fi. And let's just log in. So you can see there's either CSC account or Haka login. Now I will use CSC login, and I will use the same user than Suvi used, so that I can see the frozen data that Suvi just added. Okay, now we are logged in, and add dataset, and you can decide whether you use Kuvain or Kuvain Lite. Today we are going to use Kuvain Lite. There we are. This is the first page you will see when you come to the Kuvain Lite. Not much to do. Basically, this one is the one you should click. The text box in here is something that you should forget for now. It's useful when you have a lot of data sets already in Kuvain Lite. Then you can search by entering a name here and the existing data sets. You can search the existing data sets in here. In the future version of Kuvain Lite, we will remove this text box if there is no data sets yet in here. But yes, let's click create dataset. Let's just take a look how this looks like, just to give you a quick look. Not so many fields, not very scary one. So these are basically the fields you need to fill in to have data sets ready to be published. There are two fields which have actually the language versions. All the other fields have only one language you fill it in with. So title and description are something that you can add both in Finnish and in English. One language is mandatory. You can fill them in either in Finnish or English, and it affects the way the dataset can be found in Etsin. So whatever you search in Etsin, the both versions of the title and descriptions will affect to the search result. And in addition, it affects if the user is using Etsin with English user interface, then the English title and description is shown, and if he's using Finnish, then the Finnish title and description are shown. So I will just fill in some demo content. So this is not going to be very fancy and or research point of view very valuable data set, but just to give you an idea how to use the fields and what to fill in. So title in Finnish, I will use both languages so that I can show you how it's going to look in in Etsin. So first in Finnish demo. Let's fill in the date and some description. Let's put some Finnish in here. And then in English, dataset test demo. And description in here. Some spelling mistakes, but we don't care. Just type in something. Yeah, now we have title and description. Then other identifiers. This is not mandatory field. It should only be used if you already have a persistent identifier for this dataset. Despite whether you use this field or not, Metax in the background will generate a persistent identifier for this dataset at the same time you publish it. So you can let this be empty, but let's fill in something in order to show how it looks like in Etsin. I just copy something in there. Yeah, so I already had a DOI. Field of science, just fill in something from the drop down. And then keywords. This is important field because this affects how we can find the dataset in Etsin also. At the moment, they keywords are inserted as free text, and you can add multiple ones, test, demo, something, and add them one by one if you wish. Later this year, we are adding the keywords also as reference data. We will use Koko ontology so that you can choose and search Koko keywords from the drop down. But at the moment, just free text. Then a bit larger set of fields, actor. So this is something you can fill in whoever contributed to the or took part for this research or data collecting, or whoever you just wish to mention for this dataset. One field is mandatory, creator, who created the data. There can be multiple ones. Actor is either person or organization. I will show you both. And one actor can act in several roles in this dataset. I'm adding myself, and because I was really active doing this research, I was in all the roles. I even published. I'm even the publisher. Important field, email. It's not mandatory, and if you fill in something, it's not shown in Etsin. But adding this will add a feature in Etsin. There will be a button that says send a message or something like that. And whenever user clicks that, he can send a message to this email without seeing the actual email, what it is. So Etsin will do the sending in the background using this email. For a person, I could add, for example, ORCID ID identifier. I don't have one, so I left that empty. And for a person, an organization is mandatory. you can select it in from the drop down. So now all the fields are filled in. I save and I see added actor area, and these are all the roles. I can edit this one. I actually realized I was not the publisher. Just click the pen and remove the role. This and save again. And now Erja was not a publisher, which gives me the opportunity to add a publisher, and it was actually on organization. So organization and publisher is the role, and I will add CSC in the publisher role. No email, or I could add the service desk email, for example. Like that. And now we have publisher CSC. And you could add as many as you want. Another person, just click the roles, fill in the data and save. They will be all listed in here. But I will not add anymore. Rights and licenses. License, very important field. We have actually made Creative Commons as a default, so that you won't forget to fill it in, but you can always change it from the drop down. But let's not change it. Then access type. This will not affect to the dataset itself. Dataset is always visible in Etsin and findable if it's not removed. So not for dataset, but this is for the data itself. If it's open, then anyone can download the data. But you can set it as restricted. No one can download. Embargo, when you need to add also the expiration date. So after that date, the download is available, but before it's not. Or requires login in Fairdata service. So whoever wants to download needs to log in. Or a new feature requires applying permission. This is actually not yet ready in Etsin, will be during this year. So if you now select this one, it's same as restricted use, but as soon as we implement the solution, then it means that whoever wants to download the data needs to, there is a button saying ask for permission. You click that one, and then the owner of the dataset will see that someone has asked for the permission and can then allow or deny the download permission. But let's put it as open. So as easy as that, we now have all the metadata filled in. And now we start adding files, the data itself. Two options, either link remote resources, data that is already stored somewhere outside of Fairdata. You have to tell a title, use category, and then the URL. Where is the data? Actually, in production version, we have page URL and download URL. So separate fields. Where is the data and what is the direct download link? Neither one is mandatory, so you can leave them empty or fill in one or another or both. But in this demo version, we still have only one URL. But let's not add remote resources, but IDA ones. As soon as you select IDA as your data source, you will get this option to make the dataset cumulative or growing, whatever the term is. Default is no, with what means that whenever you add something to the dataset, or let's rephrase, you publish the dataset and then you want to add some data to it. If it's not a cumulative dataset, then adding the files will automatically create a new version, because it needs to stay untouched. Someone may have already cited to the dataset, and it needs to stay the same. So adding, deleting, editing the data itself will generate a new version. But if you select yes, this is cumulative, for example, if you have some, you are measuring something that new data will come periodically every month or so, you might want to select this one. This means that users in Etsin will see that this is a growing dataset, and be noted that if you cite this dataset, there might be additional data whenever someone comes and sees the dataset in Etsin. So Etsin knows it's cumulative and will show that there may be additions to the data. Still, you don't have a permission to delete or edit the data. Only adding, deleting, and editing still makes a new version. But let's put it no. And one more thing that is different in this demo version than now in production. This week's Tuesday, 2 days ago, we implemented the DOI option in production Kuvain Lite. So whenever you choose IDA as a data source, there will be a checkbox right about here stating something like, I want to have DOI instead of URN. If you check it, then right at the moment when the dataset is published, Metax will create a DOI for the dataset instead of URN, and immediately will also send the metadata info to the data site. But not yet DOI in our demo version, so we will get URN. Okay, IDA as a dataset. Then we go and select which files. Demo project 2, same project that Suvi saw in IDA. Let's select that one. And now we can see the frozen folder. There were 3 other files, but they are not shown because they were not frozen. So only this one. And we can either select the whole folder or just the files we want. Let's select the 2 of them. And after that, we have metadata, we have data, and yes, we are ready to publish. So let's submit. Yes, dataset published. You in Etsin. Let's do that. And here we see dataset, test demo, and the data I wrote. If I change the language to Finnish, you can see that now I see the Finnish version of the title and description. Data is in here, downloadable, test data 3 and 4, download. And I added the DOI as an earlier identifier, it's shown in here, but the actual persistent identifier Metax generated is shown in here. So this is the one you should use if you cite to this dataset. That was about it for the demo.
There are 4 questions. Do you see them or do you want me to read them?
Is the license provided from the services, or do you have to get it from some other place? In this Kuvain Lite, you only tell what the license is. So we don't actually provide any licenses. You just tell under which license the data should be used. What is the difference between Kuvain and Kuvain Lite? At the moment, Kuvain has some additional fields that Kuvain Lite doesn't yet have, but all the published datasets are editable in both Kuvains. So whatever I now published in here and can see it in here is also visible in Kuvain. So now that I published this one, I can also find this in Kuvain and continue editing it here, in there. So same storage, same integration with Etsin and Metax, but just the user interface is a bit different. Can you have your organization own license used with the data, not CC? Can you describe metadata in variable level with Kuvain like it's done, for example, in aineistokatalog? Okay, let's go one by one. Can you have your organization's own license? Yes. If I take edit, there is the way to do it, and go to the license. Where is it? There it is. There are these existing licenses, but you can always, for example, take other URL and then type in the address where the license can be read, where the information is stored. So this is one way to do it. And then I need to read the, yep. Was someone saying something?
Yeah, I was wondering if the variable level means that can you describe the files or something? Well, variable is different than files, but I think you could show how that it's also possible to add metadata to files also.
Ah, okay, yeah, all right. Let's get back to metadata for files is in here. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to show this one. So these are the added files, and now there is a pen icon. So these are actually the metadata fields that I can fill in. So title can be something else than the file name. For in default, it's the file name, but it can be something else. Just file name something. Change that. Then description, you can add any text you want. Use category. What is the data? Outcome material is default, but you can select other one, for example, publication, and file type. You can also tell that, for example, text. Was this answering to the question? Then there is another question. How was it with persistent identifier if already published data's Kuvain, if already published data's Kuvain information is edited?
So that if you have published a data set, you can edit all other all metadata fields, but you cannot change the files. And the idea there is that if someone uses the files and says that I have used this datasets files and provides the persistent identifier, then those files should not change. So you can, for example, publish a dataset and
I can actually show what happens if I now add files to this dataset. Let's go to edit. I added 2 files. Now I noticed that actually I wanted to also add this third one. Let's add it, and I get a pop-up saying that I have already published this dataset. If I remove or add files, I will get another version automatically. So yes, I'm aware, and let's update. So I can open now the new version, and if I go back to datasets, I can see that there is this new version and old version. If I see this in Etsin, the newer one, I can see that this is version 2, and there is also the version 1. This one has 3 files, and the older one has the 2 of them. So whoever cited this one will use this URN to see these files, and the newer version has a new URN, which should be used when citing to this version. Was there any other questions?
one more question was about Etsin search taking into account file level metadata. I don't think it currently searches that, but
No. Actually, Etsin search is something we are investigating regarding the usability and UX design. So I think there will be changes how the find works, but not at the moment. Have you planned to have a DOI that points always to the newest version? In general, this is possible. Good idea. We haven't planned that, but we are planning the versioning, how Metax does the versioning, or should it even be automatic? Or should a user always say that I want to create a new version and then to be able to add or edit the data? So that could be something to think about at the same time when planning that one. Good idea, but not yet possible. I think we started to be ready.
So on behalf of CSC and the speakers, we want to thank you, all the attendees and the participants, and we hope to see you again.